Chapter 22 The Woes of Queen Marka. June 25th, 2086. Rotorua, Hokianga. Himawari and her husband were trying to avoid looking like tourists. They were exploring the sunny reptilian quarter of Rotorua. Himawari loved studying alien culture, and she had been dying to visit this neighborhood ever since she found out it was there. So Amako asked Runhan and Hali if it was okay for he and his wife to leave the temple for a few hours. "We're not forcing you to stay here," Runhan said with a shrug. "Tell your wife to keep her distance from the Mycor droids over there. They've been acting weird for a while now." Of course, the easiest way to make a person do something is to forbid them from doing that very thing. Once Himawari was told Runhan's warning, she wanted to go to the reptilian quarter even more, hoping for a chance to see these malfunctioning droids. And that was how the married couple found themselves in the sizzling hot environment of Rotorua's reptilian quarter. It was incredibly hot there, to the point where Himawari and Amako each had to remove a layer of clothing and constantly refill their water bottles at the neighborhood park. They sat down underneath a tree to watch the people, as there were no benches or tables here. Instead, smooth rocks were set up on the open ground for Kelt, Vipers, and Mycor to soak up some sunlight. Himawari giggled at the sight of one Viper laying on a rock. The 10-foot-long serpentine alien was so relaxed that she was laying belly up in the sun with her tongue lolling out one side of her mouth. Around midday, the reptilian neighborhood seemed to go quiet. The sun was in the middle of the sky, so all of the cold-blooded residents came outside to sunbathe. Himawari and Amako expected the neighborhood to be completely still and silent for a few hours while this happened, but they were in for a surprise. As the reptiles took their midday break, a new group of individuals took to the streets. For the first time in her life, Himawari spotted a Mycor droid. These robotic lifeforms were bipedal machines with two disproportionately long arms and no discernible head. Himawari knew about Mycor droids and the story of how they had come into being. It went like this. About 500 years ago, the Mycor people, a race of herbivorous reptiles, figured out how to build spacecraft and embarked on their first journey into the stars. By pure bad luck, the Mycor Homeworld was located in the Great Wastelands, a region of space plagued by piracy. The first Mycor space explorers were attacked by tyrannic raiders. Those who survived returned home with news of the galaxy being dark and full of terrors. A wave of fear and xenophobia washed over the planet Mykonon. The Mycor people lived in existential terror of alien invasion, and they wanted nothing to do with the outside galaxy. Finally, someone came up with the idea of building a droid army to defend Mykonon from the unknown. In a matter of decades, droids outnumbered the Mycor people, and the planet was made safe from the tyrannic raiders. But around the same time, a Bantusi trader visited Mykonon, proving that friendly races do exist in space. Unwilling to trust any Xenos and fearing the unknown, the brightest minds on Mykonon constructed a powerful artificial intelligence and gave it control of the droid army, with one specific mission: to interact with galactic civilizations and protect the Mycor from attack. Nobody knew exactly when it happened, but somewhere along the line, the machine intelligence completely supplanted the actual Mycor government. The transition was peaceful, quiet, and noticed by few. Nowadays, the Mycor people were completely subordinate to the very machines they relied on for protection. So when Himawari spotted a Mycor droid lumbering through the city park, she expected it to blare some noisy, obnoxious commands or directives over a loudspeaker, like a typical robot overlord from all the alternate history novels. Instead, when the droid reached a sunbathing Mycor, the droid raised its hand and sprayed the giant reptile with a gentle mist of warm water. "Relax," the droid spoke in a soft voice. "Weather reports suggest the skies will remain sunny all afternoon. Take this time to rest and warm your body." Himawari turned to her husband and signed out a question. "Is the robot pampering that guy?" "The Mycor say their droids have a mandatory pampering protocol," Amako explained. "I think that's what he's doing, or what he was doing. What's going on?" Amako and Himawari both sat up. The droid had paused halfway through its interaction with the relaxed Mycor. The reptilian opened his eyes and looked up to see the droid was now frozen in place, locked into position as though it had suddenly turned into a statue. "What the?" Amako and the Mycor said at the same time. Amako and Himawari stood up and walked over to the frozen droid. The Mycor turned its gaze to them as they approached. "It's the second time this happened today," the Mycor grumbled. "All of the droids are on the fritz." Himawari rapped her knuckles against the droid's faceplate, trying to get its attention. Nothing happened. "Does it recover?" Amako asked. "Eventually," the Mycor sighed. "Just walk away and give it time. Same for all of the others." When Amako translated this into sign, Himawari raised her eyebrows. "Really?" she asked. "All of the droids in Rotorua are having trouble here?" "Not just Rotorua," answered the Mycor. "It's all over the galaxy. I've heard someone say the problem might be the uplink to the central AI, but I think it's hogwash. All of these problems started when your people decided to pick a fight." The Mycor narrowed his eyes at Himawari. Keeping in mind the knowledge that Himawari was at a 400-pound disadvantage against a fully grown Mycor, Amako pulled her away from the scene. During the walk back to Korlan, Amako and Himawari looked around and spotted a few more droids that were clearly having problems. One droid had turned sharply on the sidewalk and was walking headlong into a storefront, bumping into the wall over and over again. Another droid had frozen in place, just like the first one. A third machine stopped in its tracks, turned around, and looked upward, pointing its metal fingers at some distant point in the sky no one else could see. "Wow, this problem is actually pretty extensive," Amako commented. "But I guess I wouldn't mind if this is the biggest problem we deal with all day." It was not. Amako and Himawari entered the temple and started looking for their friends. As it happened, Chris Wright was looking for them. He was upset. "Higaran family culture is going to drive Randall insane," Chris said to Himawari. "One of them just tried to interrogate Randall about why you divorced him. The way he was talking, you'd think he'd try to kill your kids or something." When they found him, Randall Murphy was trying to get out of a conversation with several agitated Higarans. One of them, dressed in blue cleric's robes, was trying to get Randall to roll up his sleeves. "Did you forget I'm human?" Randall was saying. "We don't tattoo family symbols on each other." "Then what is that mark on your arm?" the Higaran asked. "What could possibly be more important than your own family?" Randall tugged on his sleeve again, and this time Amako and Himawari spotted the image on his arm. Randall had a tattoo depicting an element from the movie Faith in Chaos. The film was a dramatic reenactment of the Battle of Iraqi, a historical moment that occurred over 150 years ago. Specifically, the tattoo was an image of the Soul Keeper, a semi-mythical sword Toamami used to defeat the Paradox. Amako jumped into the confrontation, giving Randall room to breathe. He said, "Friends, don't think too hard on my buddy's tattoo. The mark on his arm is, a reference to human popular culture. I'm afraid you may not understand it without the proper context." Amako was choosing his words carefully because the Soul Keeper was an important part of Partogan culture. And it was just a little awkward for him to defend a human wearing a tattoo of it. The Higarans remained offended, but then Himawari rushed to Randall's defense, which caused more confusion than anything else. To the Higarans, it made no sense at all for a person to defend their ex-spouse in any capacity. Ultimately, sheer culture shock brought Randall's interrogation to a stop, and the Higarans started to leave the humans alone. Randall, Chris, Himawari, and Amako decided they needed to give their Higaran hosts some time to cool off. So they stepped out of the Kurlan temple together and crossed the street to a Taidani sports bar. Inside, there was a raucous watch party going on. A collection of humanoids, such as Partogans, Higarans, Ashurians, and Taidani, were watching a Koli match on the dozens of televisions and holograms around the bar. Only one screen carried the news, and it was running a story about the human flagship being ambushed and destroyed over Earth itself. Chris Wright waved to a very old-looking Taidan and sat down to talk with him. Himawari wrinkled her nose. She had visited countless planets in her lifetime, but she never got used to the odd smell that seemed to linger in the air when 3 or more spacefaring species gathered in the same place. It was like these travelers brought the scent of their home worlds with them. Amako and his human companions took the table next to Chris and asked what he was doing. "This fellow is a veteran of the Second Hyperspace War," Chris explained, pointing to his Taidani companion. "He was at the Battle of Neptune." "Hana, wasn't your dad in that one?" Himawari beamed as she shook the old Taidani's hand. As far as she was concerned, any alien who fought beside her father in the war might as well be her friend automatically. Amako ordered drinks, while he and Randall laughed about their run-in with the Higarans. Himawari brought Chris up to speed on the haywire Mycor droids, and once refreshments arrived, the retired Taidani warrior told his story about the Battle of Neptune. Himawari had already been told this story countless times by her parents, since one of them was actually there when it happened, so she did not really pay attention. Instead, she allowed her eyes to wander to the television above the table. The city of Rotorua was holding a Koli game in the stadium on the other side of town, where the city's official Koli team was defending against a visiting team from the Ashurian city of Wasolo. Everyone in the bar was cheering for the local team so loudly that people carrying on conversations had to raise their voices. Himawari, of course, could not hear the game or the general commotion around her. But she did get into the spirit of things as the Rotorua forward player caught the ball in the net of his Koli staff and started running down the field with it, preparing to shoot it into the opposing team's goal. He swung the staff and sent the ball flying through the air. Dozens of bar patrons rose in their seats and started cheering. But then the screen faded to black. There was silence for a moment before someone cried out, "What the hell? Someone put the game back on!" Angry yells started to fill the bar, catching the attention of Amako, Randall, and Chris. Finally, the TV screens lit up again, this time showing an image of the Partogan national symbol. 3 dots flanked by a pair of double crescents on the left and right. This is Xenonian News. We have interrupted this program at the request of the royal government of the Partogan-Levakian Commonwealth to transmit an important message to all citizens of the Commonwealth. The bar fell silent, aside from one very drunk sports fan who complained about the poor timing of the interruption. A news anchor finally appeared on the screen. He was a Partogan man who looked rather disheveled, as though he had suddenly changed out of his regular clothing into a formal black suit that made him look as though he was in mourning. "You are watching Xenonian News from the planet Hokianga," said the anchor. "I am Toa Makura Virihana from our news desk in Rotorua. This is a special report from Xenonian News. We have just received word from the Royal Palace in Mahurangi City to expect a very important announcement from the royal government of Queen Marka. We go live to a shot of the Mahurangi Palace, where we expect the announcement to be given at any moment." Now there was total silence in the bar. Everybody was paying close attention to the news report that was displayed on every TV and hologram on the premises. Outside on the city streets, a different kind of silence fell as pedestrians stopped in their tracks to watch the news on one of the many digital displays that normally carried advertisements. Amako translated everything into sign language so Himawari could keep up. The news report cut away to show a podium outside the royal palace on the planet Auraki. Some of the most reputable news agencies in the galaxy had set up microphones and cameras to catch the unexpected announcement. Only a moment later, a tall Levakian with orange fur and wearing a military uniform stepped into view. He approached the podium and began to speak. "Citizens of the Commonwealth of Partogans and Levakians, my name is General McCavity of the Commonwealth Navy and Galactic Defense Force. It is my unfortunate duty to inform you that Kuhina Nui Tamaho Ranji Nui, the leader of Her Majesty's Royal Government, has died from sudden and unexpected causes. Her Majesty the Queen is inside the palace, where she will issue a statement of her own tomorrow morning." Everybody inside the bar gasped at once. It sounded like all of the air was being sucked out of the room. At the same moment, news reporters swarmed General McCavity with questions. "General," a reporter called out, "why isn't Queen Marka making this announcement?" "The Queen has not only lost her Kuhina Nui, she has also lost a family member," General McCavity said. "Her Majesty must be given time to grieve." Himawari, Chris, and Randall all looked at Amako, the only Partogan in their group. He quickly explained. "Queen Marka and the Kuhina Nui are from 2 different branches of the Ranji Nui family," he explained. "It's a very powerful and influential clan. I think the Kuhina Nui was her distant cousin, or something like that." Up on the screen, the press conference continued. "What is the military doing, sir?" another reporter asked. "All military forces, the Commonwealth, the Triple Alliance, and the Galactic Defense Force are proceeding with their current objectives and will continue the fight against the humans," General McCavity said. "There is no cause for alarm." "Sir," another reporter cut in, "the Kuhina Nui is dead. The Queen is sequestered. Who is making all of the decisions right now? Who is in control?" General McCavity's tail flicked and his ears flattened. He was agitated. "Legally," he said, "the power and authority of the Kuhina Nui will revert to the Queen until she appoints a replacement. Her Royal Majesty will assume full command tomorrow once..." But the general never got to finish his reply, as several reporters were unsatisfied with it. They pressed the issue, with several people all speaking at once. "Who is making the decisions? Who is in control?" General McCavity bared his teeth as he spoke loudly over the reporters. As of this moment, I am in control, pending the Queen's return to her duties. This did not produce the result McCavity was hoping for. All of the news reporters launched into even more questions, and in the bar, a nervous atmosphere started to take form. Wait a minute, said a Lavakian patron. Did he just say, hold on, is the military running the country right now? Sounds like it, grumbled an Ashurian. My planet has military takeovers all the time. Nice to see it happening to someone else for a change. No way, said another Lavakian. McCavity wouldn't do that, would he? Himawari started feeling uncomfortable, and she asked her husband to take her back to the Kurlan temple. Amako agreed, while Chris and Randall followed close behind. Everyone at Kurlan had already heard the news, but the atmosphere in the Higaran temple was slightly more lighthearted, if not celebratory. Because the Partogan-Higaran alliance recently splintered, the Higaran residents of the temple were mostly indifferent towards the Partogans' plight. A select few were clearly happy to hear about the news, but they were keeping their emotions in check because Amako was around. Himawari and her companions all slipped into her own living quarters and turned on the TV. Sitting together on her bed, the foursome watched as the news story dragged on. Very slowly, over the next hour, more details came out. According to reports, the Kuhina Nui had suddenly collapsed and died while he was alone in a room with Queen Marka. Amako winced when a psychologist came onto the news program and suggested that the Queen was most likely traumatized by witnessing her cousin die in front of her. Military analysts tried to predict how the Commonwealth would prosecute the war now that the leader of its government was dead. How can Marka lead her own nation and act as galactic custodian at the same time? A correspondent asked. That question must be answered urgently. The group continued watching the news, enraptured, until there was a sudden pounding on the door and everyone jumped. Amako opened it and two people stepped inside. Runhan Somtal and Halimi Haka were looking very anxious, especially the former. As soon as they entered the room, Himawari saw that both women were clearly itching to jump into some kind of action. Runhan pointed at Amako and launched straight into the questions. Were you being tracked here? Did anyone follow you from Earth? No. I'm sure of that, Amako said. What's going on? Communication, Runhan said. Have you talked to anyone from Earth or Auraki since you got here? No, Amako and Chris said together. Himawari took over. Look, while you guys were watching shit go down on Partoga, a human battleship dropped out of hyperspace. It's crossing the system right now, heading for a slipgate that leads into Partogan territory. And on top of all that, they're using a hologram generator to disguise it as a civilian ship. Look, this is really unusual. It's just one ship flying by itself, with no escort or support. This is really strange. How can you tell it's a hologram? Chris asked. One of the emitters is malfunctioning, Hali said. The hologram is incomplete, and we can see the warship underneath. Isn't it a strange coincidence? Said Runhan. A disguised human ship passes over our heads on the way to Auraki, right as Auraki is in turmoil? What are the four of you hiding? Come on, Amako, what do you know? Amako, Himawari, Chris, and Randall were all confused, and they said just as much. It took some doing, but Amako was able to convince Runhan that he and the others were just as surprised by this news as everyone else. Amako said to Runhan, If we send a message to Auraki, what are the chances they can intercept the human ship? Slim to none, Runhan replied. My people shut down their proximity sensor net on Iraqi's southern border. That battleship is going to fly right through, and no one will see them." Amako looked horrified. His eyes went wide. "Oh, no. Hali, we've got to do something. If that thing gets to Iraqi, my people can't lose their homeworld again. We can't go through this again." Himawari started moving her hands in rapid sign language, and Randall translated. "Hali, is there anything you can do to help? The UN is doing terrible things. That's why we had to flee from Earth. We've got to stop them doing something terrible to the Partogans." Hali nodded. "Fine. Amako, tell your human friends to follow. Runhan, call Garin and tell him to move the Archangel to my flagship." Amako jumped with surprise. "Wait, you're really gonna chase a battleship? You got a better idea?" Hali asked. "That thing is disguised right now, and there's no more Higaran prox sensors beyond the Partogan border. If we lose tracking, it's gone forever. So we've got to give chase, and give chase now." Hali turned around and left the room. Through the walls, everybody could hear Hali's voice carry across the temple courtyard. "Get the crew to their shuttles! I want the whole flotilla ready to move!" Next to Himawari, Randall actually jumped up and down on the balls of his feet in excitement. "Guys, do you know what this means?" "The UN is going to try and murder a bunch of Partogans?" Chris said. "Well, yeah, but also we get to fly in a pirate fleet with freaking Halimi Haka. There's no space pirate like her alive right now. This is going to be insane." Roughly 6 hours later, there was a grand departure from Rotorua spaceport. With a great roaring of engines, 3 super capital ships rose away from their moorings and into the sky. Like their 2 sister ships already in orbit, these were Archangel-class dreadnoughts. Heavy warships with a similar size and armament as the human battleships sneaking away from the planet. But this was only the beginning. Alarms sounded across the Rotorua spaceport, and pedestrians were urged to go inside a secure building. Air traffic control ordered all civilian spacecraft to clear away from the port, and in moments, the skies above Rotorua were completely empty. And then there was a noise unlike any other, followed by a genuine earthquake that rattled windows and shook the leaves off the plantoid Morbazak. To an observer standing far away, it looked as though a portion of the city's skyline had started to move. With a tremendous heaving motion, a city-sized spacecraft lifted off from the port and rose into the sky. A full-sized mothership rose away from the city and followed the dreadnoughts into space. This was the Ashoka, personal flagship of space pirate Halimi Haka. The Ashoka was an Explorer-class deep space mining vessel, the primary mothership used by Kith Somtaw. Constructed and launched under the name Kurlan many decades ago, the Ashoka was heavily modified for its work as a pirate ship. She was 6 miles long from bow to stern and stood almost 1¼ miles in height. The pirate mothership was equipped with 6 energy cannon turrets, each the size of a stadium, and a spinal-mounted siege cannon, allowing the Ashoka to project incredible firepower great distances away. As the Ashoka flew away from the planet Hokianga, she was flanked by her flotilla of 5 dreadnoughts. The Sakala, Theskire, Kapisi, Amida, and Akalon each carried enough firepower to wipe out all life on a small planet. The pirate fleet assembled above the planet and then commenced their pursuit of the disguised human battleship. Himawari and her friends followed Hali and Runhan onto the Ashoka's bridge. They couldn't help but look around, highly impressed. The bridge was laid out in a way that reminded her of old-world NASA Command Center in Houston, with rows upon rows of computer workstations. And despite being a Higaran vessel, the Ashoka was flying with a multi-species crew. There were Higarans, Tidan, Vagar, Tobari, Partogans, Levakians, Kelt, Ashurians, and so many others. There were avians like Amadi, Saibon, and Vanians here as well. A Tobari crewman ran across the bridge, panting as he carried a bundle. When he reached Hali, she reached out and snatched it from him. "You're cutting it close, shipswain," Hali growled at him. "You know I can't go to hyperspace without this." "Wait, what is it?" Chris asked. Amako rolled his eyes. "It's her cape," Amako grumbled. Hali really cares about her appearance. As he spoke, Hali unfurled a blue cape with deep gold trimming and attached it to her flight suit. "Appearances matter," she said. "The best pirate can scare a mark into surrendering without ever firing a shot. Hopefully we can do that when we catch up to that battleship. Sensors, tell me a story." All of this fascinated Himawari, and she followed Hali closely as the Higaran pirate walked over to a large sensor manager where a holographic map of the star system was displayed. While Amako translated, a Higaran crewman explained the situation. The human battleship is still hiding behind its holographic disguise. They're pretending to be a cargo ship and are broadcasting valid recognition signals, which means they'll make it across the Partogan border with no trouble. Hali swore. "How long until we get into weapons range?" she asked. "Negative, ma'am. They're faster than us," the crewman replied. "The best we can do is track them, and then spring an ambush if they ever slow down or stop." "That's how I like to do these things anyway," Hali said with an evil smile. Then, with a swishing of her cape, she moved to the front of the bridge and addressed the crew. "Listen up! We've got a chase on our hands! We cannot lose track of that battleship. We all saw what happened when the humans raided Rotorua, and I will not let it happen to Araki. If we can catch that ship, we can save Jericho only knows how many children from being abducted by the humans. So burn the engines and fly this damn ship fast until we fly her apart. Catch that battleship, and when we catch her, we give no quarter." The pirate crew cheered and went to work. Amako, Himawari, Chris, and Randall felt a collective chill as the interstellar pursuit began. Everyone threw themselves into their work, pushing the Ashoka and her escort ships beyond their limit in an effort to close the massive gap between themselves and the human warship. With a big head start, the human ship reached the edge of the system and dove into a slipgate. From here, the slipgate looked like a tiny, brightly burning star. But everyone knew what it really was, a naturally occurring hyperspace gate, with only one possible exit point. It would just be a question of where and when the humans lost speed or came to a stop. Then it was simply a question of how long they could hold out in a vicious 6-on-1 ambush. Starting in the Ashoka's engine room, before spreading along the central spine, the pirates began to sing a shanty. As she patrolled the length and breadth of her vessel, Hali joined in the song, encouraging her friends and wife to do the same. The song reverberated through the halls of the ship and grew so loud that a hyperwave call from the Somtaw Kithsa went ignored. Perhaps this was intentional, as Runhan was expecting them to call anyway. But instead of answering, she took the time to boost the crew's morale, adding her voice to a growing chorus of motivated pirates, ready to strike their own blow against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for the past 2 years. Come all you young spacefarers, listen to me. I'll sing you a song of our fish from the sea. And it's windy weather, boys, stormy weather. When the wind blows, then we're all together. Boys, blow ye winds, fringe word, blow ye winds, blow. Out to the galaxy steady she goes. Up comes the great dragon in search of our home. Through space to a place that's beneath waves and foam. And it's windy weather, boys, stormy weather.
When the wind blows, then we're all together. Boys, blow ye winds, fringe words, blow ye winds, blow. Out to the galaxy steady she goes. Come the solar winds taking us far, all through the space lanes and out to the stars. And it's windy weather, boys, stormy weather. When the wind blows, then we're all together. Boys, blow ye winds, fringe words, blow ye winds, blow. Out to the galaxy steady she goes. Come on, you young spacefarers, listen to me. I'll sing you a song of our fish from the sea. And it's windy